And thank you for joining us for the West Virginia Learning Schools and Growth Mindset webinar. This webinar is a follow-up to our June 20th event that we held in Summersville, West Virginia. That event was well attended. We shared lots of information about growth mindset and learning schools, and the decision of the participants at that point in partnership with the Department of Education is that we wanted to continue to learn more and share more information about how to really apply growth mindset into the learning school classroom. So that is what we are planning to do today, and this event is brought to you by REL Appalachia. It is one of 10 regional education labs across the country. These labs are administered by the U.S. Department of Education Institute of Education Science. REL Appalachia represents 4 states, West Virginia, Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee. And we're here to partner with you and help bring the best research information to you for application in schools and classrooms. At REL Appalachia, we do a number of different things. We produce practitioner-friendly research. We hold hands-on workshops and webinars, provide technical assistance, and literature reviews. Areas that we focused on during our contract are things like early warning systems, college and career readiness, effective data use, literacy and numeracy instruction, and classroom technology. Feel free to tweet at REL Appalachia or at MindsetWork. Anything that particularly stands out to you as an application for the classroom and meaningful information. As I mentioned, the goals of the webinar today are to explore the connection between the Learning Schools Initiative and Growth Mindset application, as well as link the growth mindset theory to practice with hands-on classroom application for K-12 education. So before we begin with our focus on the growth mindset, just a couple of review points on the Learning Schools Initiative. A learning school, as most of you know, is a school where everyone is learning, including students, administrators, and teachers. It's a school that is undergoing continuous improvement using data to determine both student and educator learning goals. A school united in growth mindset. In West Virginia, an initiative of the West Virginia Board of Education requires that all West Virginia public schools become learning schools by the end of the 2016-17 school year. So we feel that this information is very applicable at this time, and we believe will help schools as they undertake their work to become a learning school by the end of the school year. So it is my pleasure at this time to introduce to you Emily Deal. Emily will be talking about mindsets and motivation, changing the way we think about abilities. So Emily, I'd like to turn this over to you, and we thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much. Well, welcome everybody. It's great to be here and be talking about mindset, motivation, and how to tie this to learning schools. I hear that many of you are following up from other sessions on mindset. And so I'd like to do a very short review of the 2 mindsets and show you a fast video that we have about how the brain grows. In Dr. Dweck's work, she identified in psychology that we can function at any point in one of 2 mindsets, depending on our notions of growth and intelligence. And if we are feeling like it's something that we can grow in and that our efforts matter, then we might respond on the green side in a growth mindset. And if we're feeling as if maybe the thing we're working at is something that we have to be born already good at, or that there are fixed abilities here, or that you are either this kind of person or that kind of person, we might respond in a fixed mindset. So any one of these triggers here in red might make us either embrace a challenge and say, this is great, it's hard, but I'll learn a lot, or avoid a challenge. We might persist even when we experience normal setbacks, or we might give up easily. When we have to try hard to get better at something, in a growth mindset, we know that's normal. It's just a part of the process. And in a fixed mindset, we may think it makes us look stupid to try hard. When we get feedback or criticism in a growth mindset, we pay attention, we learn. In a fixed mindset, we ignore it. In a growth mindset, we get very inspired when other people do well. We're looking for mentors, we're reading books about how to get better, and searching for strategies. But in a fixed mindset, other people's success feels threatening. And the interesting thing about this research is that not only is this true of how we behave in human psychology, but our neuroscience is starting to say they're noticing the same thing. Amber, do we have the video that we wanted to show on neuroplasticity?
Yes, I'm going to need to switch over, and it'll take just a moment to upload that video.
No problem. So the reason I'd like Amber to play this video for us, and hit play whenever you're ready, Amber, is that the exciting thing about the brain is that we can grow it our entire life. In the past, we were taught a little differently. So when we experience neuroplasticity, that's what it means to get smarter. Our brains become more connected, denser, heavier, and then it feels easier to do things. And that's what becoming smart is. And the more you do it, the smarter you'll become. Sure, everybody learns at different rates. Some people come to new experiences with different other habits, strategies, knowledge. And so it may look like some people just learn things easily and without trying very hard. But the truth is that all learning comes through effort, paying attention, and actual strategy use. So knowing this, it's inspiring to think, well, goodness, if I know that a deep belief that I can grow will help me get smarter, and I know some strategies that I can utilize to get smarter, then maybe there are things that I want to get better at that I can work to improve in. We know from research that when we do that intervention with students and have that conversation with students, that it impacts their motivation, it impacts their behavior, which ultimately changes their achievement. So we've seen this play out again and again, changing student GPAs, changing test scores, and changing the way that their teachers report the children are behaving more motivated. Some of the triggers that Dr. Dweck is talking about more recently is helping us understand that the fixed mindset is normal, and it's all a part of the process of taking on challenges. When we take on a challenge, we might have one of these 4 triggers, and it's at that point that we might switch into a growth or a fixed mindset. And there are a lot of variables that would contribute to that decision. We want to help more people become more metacognitive so that they understand that they have that choice, recognize when they're in a trigger, and purposefully make a growth-minded choice. Some of those triggers are things like stepping outside of your comfort zone. If I'm operating in a fixed mindset, I'm more concerned with looking smart. Whereas in a growth mindset, I'm more focused on process and what I can learn. And I want to pause there and say, we don't want to suggest that anybody shouldn't want to look smart, right? Everybody wants to be respected. We don't think that anyone should want to look stupid. But the difference is something like this. If you walk up to me and ask me a question and you say, Emily, gosh, I read this book. Do you know anything about this author? And what if I think to myself, well, that sounds familiar, but I don't know very much about it, but I want to look smart. So I say, yes, it sounds familiar to me. I think I know about that. Now, you aren't going to tell me as much as you might have told me already. So because I wanted to focus on looking smart, like I knew something about it, I'm not going to learn as much. If I said instead, no, I don't really know about that. What do you know? Tell me more about it. Now I'm going to learn a lot. So because I was focused on learning, I'm going to find out more from you and I will get smarter. And that's the difference between focus on learning versus focus on looking smart. Another trigger is high effort. That means I'm going to have to practice a lot. Maybe I won't be fast at this right away at the beginning. In a fixed mindset, I think, well, if I'm not a natural, maybe this isn't for me. Whereas in a growth mindset, I know hard work is normal, right? It's just how you get better at things. If I experience a setback in a growth mindset, I know that setbacks are just part of the process. I learn from it, I pay attention to it, I come up with a new strategy, I overcome. I'm more resilient. In a fixed mindset, a setback is evidence that I shouldn't have been doing this thing, and I give up. Transitions are a little different from stepping outside the comfort zone because they're meant to be a permanent move, right? Or at least a more permanent move than just a step outside. We experience these when we go from one job position to another, when we make major life changes. For our students, it's those big transitions from, let's say, 6th grade to 7th grade. And in a fixed mindset, again, I might try to look smart, I might protect myself and not fully engage, just in case people realize I'm new here. But in a growth mindset, I understand others can help me learn, and I'm reaching out, I'm getting involved, I'm leaning forward, and I'm being engaged. So these triggers are normal. They protect us. They help our body keep us safe and make sure that we're not taking on challenges and risks that aren't good for us. But it's important to know that we have a choice. We can ask ourselves questions and choose growth-minded behaviors. In a big picture, what a growth mindset means is that people are made, not born. In Mindset, the book, one of the quotes Carol uses is, "Becoming is better than being." And it's really about your life journey and not the destination. The question is, how do we communicate this on a day-to-day basis, especially in classrooms? What we know now, and a lot of us who are former teachers like myself know, is that some of the things we did and said in our classrooms, and some of the things we did and said as administrators and coaches of other adults, were actually fostering a fixed message and not a growth message. So I'm going to show you 3 different slides, and on each slide, there's a message that communicates a fixed mindset. Now, I want you to take a look and think, what's the issue here? What's going on? Why don't we want to say this? And then what could we say instead? I'll be pausing for you to think, and then I'll discuss a little. The first one here is, what a smart group of kids. You guys picked this up so quickly. So you're thinking about what's the issue here. And what would you say instead? A big problem with a statement like this is a focus on speed. That being smart means you can do things fast, and you can do them perfectly, and you can do them without trying very hard. When we send that message, we encourage children to want more praise, and so then they look for things that they can do quickly without trying very hard. And we don't really want our children seeking out only those experiences where they can do it without trying very hard and be perfect very quickly. We want them getting messy, right, like Miss Frizzle. Go out there, make mistakes, and get messy is what she says, the science teacher from cartoons. So if we want that, that's what we should be giving students feedback around. So instead of tying smart to quick, we could say something like, oh my goodness, you probably practiced this already. We can say, well, I didn't expect that. I didn't know you knew this already. We can say things like, oh, well, what's next for you? So that we're putting an emphasis on growth instead of an emphasis on, oh, you're smart already, because then they think smart is something you just are and not something that we strive to be ever more intelligent. Here's another one. So think, what's the issue with this, and what would you say instead? We say things like this, don't worry, because we want to lower a student's affective filter. We want them comfortable in a classroom. We want them to access the lesson or the activity or the task. And we frankly don't want them to worry, right? But telling them it's going to be easy and to not worry because it's going to be easy sets off all sorts of triggers. What if it's not easy for me? Okay. What if I can't do this fast enough? It also says hard work isn't valued. So it says, oh, we do easy things here and, you know, don't worry. So instead what we can say is something like, don't worry, this might be hard, but we're going to work through this together. We can say things like, you know what? Other fourth graders have struggled with this too, and they got it, and I know all of you can too. Because otherwise people are concerned, well, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the one who's struggling with this. And they think they're the first kid who ever had trouble with long division. One more. What's the issue here? What might you say instead? The issue here is that we're letting people off the hook in a challenge. So if you step outside of your comfort zone and take on something harder than you thought, that's a fixed mindset trigger, and we don't want you to quit on yourself. Typically in education, people don't actually say these words. This looks harsh, and most times people think, oh gosh, I would never say that. And I believe that. The problem happens is when our system sends this message through our practices. When children try something hard and we say that's okay, and we let them get out of it. So we let them exit an honors class, or we let them go from trying to mainstream from a special education class into a regular mainstream class, and we let them out when they say it's too hard. This happens all the time. It happens professionally for us. You know, sometimes some of us will step outside and try to take on more of a leadership role. It's harder than we think, and people will say, well, not everyone's cut out for that. Well, that's not what we want to send a message of. We want to send a message of grit and hard work, and you work hard for things, and it's normal for things to be tough when you're learning them. So we can say that instead. When people say they want to quit, we can say, just like we said before, other people struggled with this, and they did okay, and you can too. You know, we want you to stick this out. You're going to improve. Look how far you've come already, things like that. We're stuck in a praise mode where we really want to encourage people, and what we think mistakenly is that praising them a lot will keep people going. And it turns out that that's not really true. This is a picture from one of our schools in Washington State. And on one side, the teacher wrote, things we say to other people to make them feel good about themselves. And there are a lot of statements that are positive. You know, there's nothing bad about the statements necessarily, except maybe the last one. On the other side, though, it's things we say to other people to help their brain grow. And if you notice, on the left, it's all statements, and on the right, it's all questions. When we go to the right, we notice there's a focus on process, so that we're helping people become metacognitive about their process. When we focus on process, often we overshoot our goals. We know this if we've trained for something like a 5K or a half marathon. We say, I'm going to run this much for 13 weeks. I want to get this time. I'm going to complete the race in this time. If you actually run that 4 days a week for 13 weeks, you're probably going to do even better than your goal time was, because you focus on process. And that's what's neat about a lot of these questions here. We have more language to help all of us change the way we speak. We're used to speaking a certain way in our culture. We're speaking to our students the way our teachers spoke to us, to our children the way our parents and our grandmothers spoke to us. And that's normal. And so those of us who've taken on really switching it up and turning that dial to more growth-minded language have taken a few years to really start to hone the way we respond to others. We have these feedback and framing tools on our website under our free resources page. It's mindsetworks.com, and we have a lot of free resource downloadables. 2 are a feedback tool for what we can say to people instead of what we're used to saying, and a framing tool. And what's neat about the framing tool is it's how to talk about challenge. In the classroom, it would be, we're going to do something difficult today. And so how do you present that to students in a way that motivates them to want to do it? If we're trying to prepare students to be more perseverant, mindsets are different than teaching other things like fractions. If I'm teaching fractions, I can tell if a student has it or if they don't have it yet. What is different about teaching a growth mindset and getting students and adults to use those strategies is that they are fluid and changing all the time. If you think about it, when you go through your school day, a student gets something down and we say, great, you've got that. We're going to make it harder. And then they get that, and they say, great, you've got that. We're going to make it harder. And this keeps going all the way through until they're finished with school. I'm sure a lot of you finished your graduate studies and said, oh my goodness, I'm so glad that's done. Because we're always making it harder. And so our mindsets can be fluid and changing all the time. And what we require is school-wide support in fostering that growth mindset. So I have some tools, strategies, some tips for you today. It's important that we help students go back and forth through that fluidity between understanding that their mindset can change, feeling like they belong, feeling like the work is relevant, and then over on that right-hand side, knowing what habits and learning strategies will make them smarter, and knowing how to do school. And as they build the belief on the left, and then utilize some strategies on the right, and experience change, experience some success, they'll need a little bit more mindset support so that they can go back and take on new challenges and experience more success. So it's a constant dance. One of my colleagues in New York wanted to do that malleable mind mindset piece, that piece that was on the left, as a neuron activity, and she had all the students build pipe cleaner neurons. And as they built their neuron, they learned about the different things that the parts of the neuron do and how the neurons interact in your brain to create thoughts and ideas and to grow more, to make us smarter. Then she connected them all on the wall and said, this is learning. And this creates an idea that we are a learning community here. We can learn from each other, and it also reminds them of what happens in their brain while they learn. Any intervention like this is great in the classroom, and when you can post it on the wall, it also becomes your just-in-time intervention. Remember the fluidity, so when the students start to droop or they're forgetting that they can do this hard thing too, you can go over to the wall and point at it. Other teachers have achieved this through drawing on little sideways brain graphics, through having short videos that they'll get either from our website, on our free videos site, or other YouTube pages so that they can see what it looks like when the brain grows. Sometimes they just have conversations about it or do close your eyes and visualizations about it. But anything we can do to remind students about brain growth. Posters can be helpful as well. Posters that remind us through their picture how we build intelligence, and then providing them to teachers so that teachers have the science language to communicate to students. I remember when I first started learning this, I was teaching reading in 10th grade, so 10th grade non-readers. And I knew they could grow their brains, but I really felt like I just didn't have the language as an English teacher to describe it. So now we have posters like this for teachers to use. And more posters so that kids understand that this is within their internal locus of control as well, that becoming smarter is something that they can make daily choices around. The diet they eat. Students think they can survive on Takis and Code Red Mountain Dew, right? And again, I guess they can survive on that, but they're not lubing up their brain to grow it to be smarter. So posters like these remind them, get your sleep, kiddo, eat your healthy foods, get lots of oxygen in your bloodstream to break down those stress chemicals, because they create brain lock, and that interferes with learning. So posters like these, posted throughout your school and others, can be very helpful in creating a growth mindset school-wide culture. I want to show you a little bit of research, and to do that, I want to talk about very briefly what the teacher influence is in the classroom. A teacher cannot change a student's mindset, but a teacher can influence a student so that they're turning the dial in that fluidity up more towards growth mindset more often. And some of the components we know are helpful. We already talked about growth mindset feedback, so that's one piece. When teachers present challenges as exciting, you know, my favorite email I ever got home as a parent, my daughter's 4th grade teacher sent us a picture of her students' pre-test scores, and all of the students in class averaged a 0% average for rounding. And the teacher wrote in the email to the parents, moms and dads, this is so exciting. Look at your students. We're going to take them so far. And I laughed. I couldn't believe, one, how lucky I was that my daughter was in her class, and two, how brave the teacher was to send home a 0 to everybody. And by the end of that unit, all the students averaged 86% in rounding. So presenting that challenge as exciting really had a positive effect on the students. It should be safe for students to take risks. So how can we lower the stakes in classrooms so that more students are willing to say, I will raise my hand and ask questions, even if I'm not right in the beginning? We want to value process so that students are focused on working through things to get smarter instead of every single piece of paper having points attached to it. That's performance. We want to focus on process and only give points when it's performance time. And in that vein, we want time to be flexible and learning constant. So the time flexible piece can be when the performances happen, when the points count, and how often can they be made up, or how often are deadlines needing to stand, which is also appropriate. So let me give you an example of how a group combined a lot of those attributes into a research study. In this case, they focused on writing instruction, and they wanted students to take an essay, get some feedback, and then see how many students would actually utilize the feedback, make the paper better, and turn it back into the teacher for an improved score, which shows motivation, and it shows a focus on process and learning, and it will result in a higher performance. One group of the students, all of the papers were given feedback by the teacher in the normal way that the teacher would do. But then the researchers took one group and they put a bland note on it, and it said, I'm giving you these comments so that you'll have feedback on your paper, and then asked for the students to change it and turn it back in. The other group got what they called an efficacy note. It said, I'm giving you these comments because I have high expectations. I know you can reach them. So what we're doing here is we're looking at growth-minded feedback. We're looking at maybe even presenting a challenge as a good thing. We're looking at a value on process, and we're looking at flexible time and constant learning. And here's what happened. They took a look at students who were revising their paper. And then what they noticed was that when they disaggregated by race, the results were even more interesting. Well, if we just look at the white students, the ones who had the efficacy note nearly hit 90% on redoing the paper. And so we saw some great statistically significant results here where that belief note made a big difference. But look at this. With African American students, the result was even more drastic. And a big lesson from this is not just how much the efficacy piece matters and the whole process matters, but also how much belongingness matters, which is one of those 4 academic mindsets. And that students need us to explicitly communicate to them belongingness, just like they need us to explicitly communicate a growth mindset, a belief that everyone can grow. We don't get a pass just because we're here and we're a teacher and we're working hard every day. They have to hear from us, I care about you, I believe someone like you can achieve here. So I'd like you thinking about that when you're finished with the webinar and as you go throughout the rest of your day. What is the implication for this for daily practice? And that might even be for you as a school leader or a district leader. Who needs to hear that they belong and that we believe in them and that we know they can grow with appropriate feedback? Where are there opportunities in the instructional day to address this and to provide some support around belonging, around redoing, and things of that nature? What we know is if we really want to see the kind of mindset a person has, we want to watch to see what they do when they don't know what to do. So we give someone a challenge. It's hard, maybe too hard. How do they respond? In a lot of our trainings and workshops, we talk about different ways we can replicate this with games and activities in the classroom, and then how to debrief those behaviors of students to start to teach them what it means to be a learner, But this is one of my favorite pictures I've gotten. This is a vocabulary test, and the student did not know how to answer and write sentences using these words. And look what they wrote. I'm trying really hard, but I can't remember what they mean. I can't get it yet. You can tell this classroom has been talking about the power of yet, and the student doesn't know the answers, but doesn't want to leave a blank page, and wants the teacher to know they have a growth mindset, they know they can get it, they just don't have it now. And that's how you know that classroom is doing growth mindset well. There's another picture I wanted to show you. This is from Fiske Elementary School. It's one of our schools in the Boston-Wellesley area. At this school, the 5th grade teacher wanted her band to learn about how the brain grows so that they can improve incrementally as musicians and feel motivated to get better. So she taught them about all the things that we do to get smarter in music, and the students collaborated with her on that. And then they posted it as a bulletin board in their school. They also took on the challenge of a middle school piece called the Captain America piece, even though they were 5th graders, and invited a professional horn player to play with them at the parent night because they didn't have a horn player. The whole story is really neat. But some of the things they identified were that people who get smarter in music do certain things. And they're very transferable skills if you think about them in terms of learning anything. And they're things like isolate the tricky bits, go slowly, practice very carefully so you don't learn it wrong, take a minute and mark missed notes, missed rhythms, step away if you get frustrated, use a metronome every time, go along and follow your part, like the paying attention piece. So all those things would serve you so well in learning math, you know, and learning how to be a better writer, in learning how to be a better artist, in doing a science project or a lab report. And so they're very transferable skills when children know that they are transferable and when they get some coaching in how to transfer them. So just like we use a metronome every time when we were doing the Captain America March, what sorts of tools do we use when we practice math that we remember to use every time to make sure we're precise? It's one of the 8 mathematical practices. So helping students see where these things transfer is all part of being a very growth-minded teacher, because we're sending a strong message that you're not just smart and I'm good at music, but I'm not good in this. No, no, no. You can take what makes you good at this, and you can transfer it over to this. This is a playful slide that we like to do with students. Remember, we were talking about what do people do when they don't know what to do. So we see students doing things like this, and we ask them, hey guys, is this what it looks like? You open up your math practice and you stare at it, and you're trying real hard, so you stare at it harder. Because that's what a lot of people think. They think, well, I'm looking at it, and I'm going to look at it harder. And if it doesn't come, maybe I'm not smart enough for this. And maybe they raise their hand and ask for help. And then they close the window and open email and get distracted. And then they're hungry. And they open the window, start, and then they click through it quickly to get it done because now they're frustrated, overwhelmed, not engaged. We want to teach students to be more resourceful. We don't want to say, oh, well, they just couldn't do the math practice. We have to give them easier math practice. Instead, let's go ahead and give them some learning strategies to see whether it's an engagement and a strategy thing or if they just don't have the math. So we teach them this. Look, prepared people have their notes ahead of time, right? So they're going to get them out and lay them next to their mouse and prepare their learning environment. Then they're going to do a strategy called comparing or connecting. So they're going to look for similarities between what we've been doing in class and what's happening on the computer and to see what's common there. Then how about we try a few and just see what happens? Tinkering, that's taking that risk, right? Being willing to be in the space of being wrong in the interest of learning and growth. Look at someone next to you. Ask a clarifying question. So looking for others, right? Reaching out for strategies. Try a few more, see if it goes better. And we mentioned that once you've done these 5 things, now it's probably appropriate to ask for help if you're still struggling. But before that, you're not really being resourceful or using strategies. You're really just staring. And if they still struggle after doing these 5 strategies, it might be that they don't have the math and they need more support in the math. But now we know. Another piece we present a lot to students and teachers is an effective effort rubric. Again, this is another one of those free downloads on the Mindset Works website. The effective effort rubric is here because we recognize that just as we had to define what SMART is, we also want to define what TRY is. If people have the mindset, I can grow, but they do not have the strategies or the know-it-all to actually improve, then we haven't done them much good, and they experience a lot of frustration. So we define here some things that people who are trying well do. They take on challenges, they learn from mistakes, they accept feedback, they apply strategies, they focus intently on task, they ask questions, and they take risks. And instead of a got it, don't have it, A, B, C, D rubric, what we've done here is we've said you might be behaving very fixed in this thing, in this competency. You might be mixed in this competency, or you might be very growth-minded in this competency, and we describe it in each column. You can use something like this to define effort, to recognize people, for good work. When we say that this is what try hard is, this is what effort is, it makes more sense to tell people you're a hard worker, you tried so hard. It takes it out of that, oh, now I feel bad, I'm the hard worker, but she's the smart one, which can happen very quickly if we just start praising for effort without first defining what we mean. If I know that you think these 7 things are what effort really is, and then you tell me, Emily, I really appreciate how hard you work and how much effort you put into things, I will understand what you mean instead of worrying that you think that I'm not smart, that I'm just a worker. When we have parent-teacher conferences, families are doing their best to help their students. They're helping their students with the strategies they have. Students are using the strategies they have. And when they say things like, she's trying as hard as she can, we can use a rubric like this to talk about maybe there's some other ways that we can learn to try, and add those to the family and the child's toolbox. A much more basic effort rubric idea could be just posted on the classroom wall as a just-in-time, used for ticket out the door, used at the end of the week for a unit, and it's a 4-3-2-1. And the measure is, how much did I try, right? Did I wait for someone else to give me the answer? Did I have ideas but not participate? Did I try strategies I knew already? Or did I try more than one way before asking for help? The students can pick a number and reflect on how they did. And then truly my favorite effort rubric I got from down here at cerebrum.wikispaces.com, and it's just this picture. If you take a look at what every child is doing on the picture, you can ask somebody, think about the thing you're working at now. Which child are you? Are you the child who's all the way at the top and feeling really successful and happy? Are you helping other people climb the tree? Are you just starting out? Are you holding the ladder for somebody else? So this is something you could use, with pre-K, K1, but it's also just something you could use for people who mentally are so stimulated all the time, like school and district leaders, and you just want to have a great conversation. Which child are you? One of my last tips is about debunking genius myths. We have a lot of these genius myths in place. We send strong messages that some people are born brilliant, and then we make movies about them. And they exclude, one, many different people in our society, right? Most of the genius myths and movies are made about men, usually white men. But the other thing we do is we start to think that people didn't work hard to become very good at that. Albert Einstein himself says, "I'm not so smart, I stuck with the problem longer." The myth about him is he's a math genius, but they say that he didn't really speak much until the age of 4. Somebody we'd put on an IEP now, and yet he became Albert Einstein. So some fun ones that we do with students are, here's some 4 ideas for you. One is Dr. Tay. He's a skateboarding physicist, which is kind of just a funny thing to think about in the first place. What Tay does is he videotapes himself and posts to YouTube of himself falling, making mistakes, and not sticking his moves. And he invents all sorts of new skateboarding techniques that no one had done before, because since he's a physicist, he knew what he could make his body and his skateboard do in time and space with the right kind of practice. And so he has a TEDx talk for students where he talks about learning and getting better and mistake making. And you can watch him mess up and mess up and mess up. And it's just a fun way to really look at how you can take a physical activity and go from not good at all to one of the best. Mozart is another myth we can debunk. We say what a little genius he was, and he of course became a very talented and accomplished musician. But something people don't know always about Mozart was his father published a book on how to teach music to toddlers before Mozart was born. So he benefited from a very focused and experienced father who invested time in him from the time he was very, very small. Karen Chang is really inspiring. She's a California young woman who left a tech job to try to be more creative. And she has many projects going that have been really interesting with things like Beats by Dr. Dre and other things that she's done in the world. But her first project was spending a year to learn to be a dancer, videotaping herself from day 1 when she was very bad to the last day. And this is a screenshot of her last day. And this video is so inspiring. It gives me goosebumps every time. It's really beautiful. And so students can see in time elapse her improvement. Then she created a Give It 100 webpage to inspire people to give learning a new thing 100 days. So a great activity to do with students, to learn about process and to learn about how you get better at something. The last one is the point of getting kids to talk to other kids. So the more we can get the peer groups to support one another's mindsets, even more we're getting into that support of that fluidity of the mindset, right? So if their friends are also saying, hey, don't you want to take on a challenge? We're sure you're scared, but good for you. That means you're trying something hard today. What Sophie did was Sophie wrote an email to us at our editor page, and she said, I got a Most Likely to Succeed award last year. And she says, you know, I got it because I read the book Mindset. And I started putting those things into practice, and I did really well in school, and then I got this award at the end of the year. She says, but now this year, I'm in my senior year, I'm afraid people are going to think that they gave the award to the wrong person if I work as hard as I did last year. What should I do? So we talked to Sophie about it and kind of coached her up a little bit about how she has to just persevere and keep going and keep using the same strategies. But what we want is we want people like Sophie to talk to other kids and say, here's how I got this award. And to be able to feel safe to do that, they need our help as teachers and administrators to get them to say, how did you get good at this? And will you share that with some other people? And then give them a venue for doing so that we communicate strongly that a genius is something that you work hard for. The last resource I think I'm showing you is on some questioning you can use. And this image is downloadable from our blog, blog.mindsetworks.com. If you hit the word cloud under my name for deal. And what this is it's a way to work it into the rhythm of your school day or the rhythm of your work week. Or if you have children, that drive to school, the kinds of things we can say to people at the beginning of a project or at the end of a project, end of day, to celebrate process, celebrate a growth mindset, celebrate challenge, and be forward thinking about strategies. What's going to be hard for you today and why? And when it gets hard, what are you going to do? What challenges are you struggling with? Who here is struggling with something now? What is it? And I think the most important one is in the bottom right, the adult think aloud, and that sharing of, do you know what I struggled with today? Because kids see us as very capable, and they think, oh my gosh, I am going to have to become an adult, like it's a switch and not a dial. And so when we share that we struggle with things too, and what our strategies are, and what we say to ourselves when it gets hard, they start to see that this is just part of life process. And they start to see that that others grow, that it's not just them who needs to grow. So we have groups of kids that we get to work with all the time. And so this video that we're going to play is students from Washington, D.C. Public Schools. And the assignment was, and this assignment is downloadable on our blog as well, the assignment was to write a classroom motto. So they learned through the first half of the year about mindset and things. Then they wrote a motto, and they said, this is how we'll function for the rest of the year. There are 2 classes that are going to speak. The video is about a minute long, and you'll get to hear what the students wrote as their mottos. Amber, can you play this one for us? We have one more class to go. And you can entertain yourself by watching them act like typical middle schoolers while they get arranged. Thanks, Amber. So just an example of what kids can come up with when they are given the tools and the strategies and the peer support to work on their mindset. So we're going to close and get to a question and answer period if you have questions. And I just want you to think about something that you're sure that you really can't do well. And put that in your head and think, well, sure, she's been talking about brain plasticity and the life choices and things. I just don't think I can learn to do this, you know. Maybe it's drive a stick shift, or maybe it's swim a mile. And then you think this. Yet. I want to thank you for attending today. You can hit us up on Twitter. You can email me if you need something. Please feel free to reach out. And I appreciate you attending today. So I'm going to turn it back over to the REL group.
Alrighty, thank you, Emily, very much. And at this time, we will open it for question and answer. We want to thank Emily and Mindset Works once more for being willing to participate and share their applications of growth mindset in the classroom. I know we had a lot of interest in that during our June 16th event on growth mindset. So this webinar will also be recorded, and it will be published on REL Appalachia's website for those of you who would like to share it with the rest of your schools. Do we have any questions at this point? Doesn't seem like we have any coming in. It's been pretty straightforward, and Emily's been a fantastic speaker. So with that, we're going to go ahead and close. When you exit out of the WebEx platform, a brief survey will come up. It's our stakeholder feedback survey from REL Appalachia, for those of you who have joined a little bit later. We encourage you to please fill out that survey, as it does allow us to continue our research and continue allowing for webinars on topics such as growth mindset for educators. And with that, I just want to thank you. As I mentioned, the webinar will be available on REL Appalachia after it's approved by IES, and you can also always tweet at us at REL Appalachia to see the current webinars and upcoming events that we'll be doing. So thank you, Emily, and thank you, everyone, for attending. Have a good evening, okay?
Thank you.